Welcome back. Let us employ the little gray cells once more. In the gathering dusk of a Paris evening, the Continental Express stood poised at the Gare de l'Est, its sleek black form a silent promise of luxury and secrets. Amid the clatter of trunks and the murmur of farewells, Hercule Poirot stepped onto the platform, his sharp eyes catching the fleeting glances of strangers bound for Istanbul. A man's brusque voice cut through the crowd, speaking of a locked deal, while a woman's perfume lingered like a whispered threat. Little did he know that within the opulent heart of this train, a crime was brewing, a puzzle so intricate that only the little gray cells could unravel its deadly design. Chapter 01. The train departs. The Continental Express stood poised at the Gare de l'Est in Paris, its sleek black locomotive gleaming under the gaslights, a monument to human ambition and elegance. It was a crisp September evening in 1925, and the platform bustled with travelers wrapped in furs and tailored coats, their breath visible in the cooling air. Porters darted about, hauling leather trunks and hat boxes, while the scent of coal smoke mingled with the perfume of departing ladies. The train, bound for Istanbul, promised a journey of opulence, threading through the heart of Europe with the precision of a Swiss timepiece. Its dining car, resplendent with crystal chandeliers and mahogany paneling, awaited passengers who expected nothing less than perfection. Among the throng, a diminutive figure moved with measured steps, his patent leather shoes clicking against the platform. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, adjusted his immaculate Homburg hat and twirled the waxed ends of his mustache. His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, surveyed the scene with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Poirot was not here on a case. For once, the little gray cells were to rest. He had promised himself a holiday, a rare indulgence after a particularly taxing investigation in London involving a stolen emerald and a duplicitous butler. Yet, as he boarded the train, his instincts hummed. A holiday, yes, but Poirot knew well that trouble had a way of finding him even amidst the velvet upholstery of first-class travel. "Bonjour, Monsieur Poirot," greeted the station-master, a wiry Frenchman with a deferential bow. "It is an honor to have you aboard the Continental Express. Your compartment, number 9, is prepared to your specifications." Poirot inclined his head, his expression one of polite satisfaction. "Merci, monsieur. I trust the journey will be as orderly as your reputation suggests." The station-master beamed, but Poirot's attention had already shifted. He stepped onto the train, his small, neat frame swallowed momentarily by the grandeur of the carriage. The corridor, lined with polished brass and crimson carpet, led him past compartments where passengers were settling in, their voices a tapestry of languages, French, English, German, and something softer, perhaps Russian. Poirot's ears, ever attuned, caught snatches of conversation, a woman's laugh, a man's brusque retort, the clink of a glass. He made his way to the dining car where the evening's first sitting was about to begin. The dining car was a vision of decadence. White linen tablecloths shimmered under the glow of chandeliers, and waiters in crisp uniforms glided between tables, balancing silver trays. Poirot took a seat near the window, where he could observe both the passing scenery and the passengers. His waiter, a young man with a nervous smile, presented the menu with a flourish. "Monsieur, may I recommend the filet mignon?" or perhaps the sole? Meunière? The waiter asked, his accent betraying a hint of Provençal. Poirot waved a hand. A simple consommé to begin, and then the poulet rôti, and, naturellement, a glass of Chateau Margaux. As the waiter retreated, Poirot's gaze swept the room. At a nearby table sat Lady Evelyn Harcourt, a statuesque English widow whose auburn hair was pinned beneath a feathered hat. Her emerald green dress spoke of wealth, but her eyes, cold and calculating, suggested a woman accustomed to command. She sipped champagne, her gloved fingers tapping the stem of her glass. Across from her was Dr. Karl Weiss, an Austrian physician with a gaunt face and restless hands. His spectacles glinted as he leaned forward, speaking in low tones to Lady Harcourt, who responded with a curt nod. At another table, Madame Celeste Dubois held court. The French actress, her blonde curls cascading over a sapphire-blue gown, laughed brightly as she recounted a story to her table-mates. Her beauty was theatrical, her gestures rehearsed, yet there was an edge to her charm, as if she were performing for an audience far beyond the dining car. Poirot noted the way her eyes darted to the other passengers, assessing, calculating. Seated alone near the far end of the car was Miss Anna Petrova, a young Russian woman with a pale oval face and dark, serious eyes. Her plain gray dress marked her as a governess, and she ate with the precision of one accustomed to frugality. Yet her posture, erect and alert, suggested a mind far from idle. Poirot's lips twitched. The governess, he thought, was not what she seemed. The final figure of note was Mr. Thomas Brant, an American businessman whose loud voice cut through the murmur of conversation. His broad shoulders strained against a pinstriped suit, and his face, flushed with wine, bore the confidence of a man who believed the world bent to his will. He sat at a table with two empty chairs, but his attention was fixed on a leather case at his side, which he patted occasionally, as if reassuring himself of its presence. Poirot's consommé arrived, and he sipped it delicately, his eyes never leaving the room. He noted the small interactions, Lady Harcourt's fleeting glance at Brant, Dr. Weiss's nervous adjustment of his cufflinks, Madame Dubois' exaggerated laugh at a waiter's remark. Miss Petrova, meanwhile, seemed to shrink into herself, her fork pausing as Brant's voice grew louder. It was then that Poirot overheard a fragment of Brant's conversation, carried by momentary lull in the dining car's hum. Brant leaned toward an unseen companion in the corridor just beyond the car's entrance, his tone sharp. "The deal is locked, I tell you," Brant said, his voice low but forceful. "No one's getting in the way, not after what I paid." The response was inaudible, but Brant's scowl deepened. He returned to his table, his hand resting protectively on the leather case. Poirot's mustache twitched. Again, a deal, locked? The phrase was curious, but he dismissed it as the bluster of a businessman. Still, the little gray cells stirred, unwilling to rest entirely. The meal progressed, the clatter of cutlery and crystal weaving a delicate symphony. Lady Harcourt excused herself early, her departure marked by the rustle of her gown. Dr. Weiss followed soon after, muttering about a headache. Madame Dubois lingered, her laughter growing louder as the wine flowed. Miss Petrova ate quickly and slipped away, her movements almost furtive. Brant, however, remained, ordering another whiskey and glaring at anyone who glanced his way. Poirot finished his meal and rose, intending to retire to his compartment. As he passed Brant's table, the American looked up, his eyes narrowing. "You're that detective, aren't you?" Brant said, his voice carrying a hint of challenge. "Poirot, right?" Poirot inclined his head. "Hercule Poirot, at your service, monsieur." Brant snorted. "Heard you're some kind of genius." "Well, no mysteries here, just business. Keep your nose out of it." Poirot smiled, unruffled. "Monsieur, my nose is concerned only with the aroma of a fine cigar." "Bonsoir." He moved on, but Brant's words lingered. The man's aggression was unnecessary, a sign of unease. Poirot filed it away, along with the image of the leather case and the phrase, "locked deal." The train's rhythm, a steady clack-clack beneath his feet, seemed to echo his thoughts. Something was amiss, even if he could not yet name it. In his compartment, Poirot arranged his belongings with meticulous care. His brushes, his pomade, his small silver mirror, all were placed with the precision of a chess master. He sat on the plush bench, gazing out at the darkening countryside. The lights of Paris had faded, replaced by the silhouettes of fields and villages. The train was a world unto itself, a microcosm of wealth, ambition, and secrets. A knock at the door interrupted his reverie. It was Monsieur Lefebvre, the conductor, a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard and an air of quiet authority. His uniform was immaculate, his manner deferential. "Monsieur Poirot," Lefebvre said, "I trust your compartment is satisfactory." "Most satisfactory," Poirot replied. "You run a fine train, Monsieur Lefebvre." "All is in order, I presume?" Lefebvre hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "Quite in order, monsieur. Though, if I may confide, some passengers are demanding. Monsieur Brant, for instance, insists on extra security for his compartment." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Security? For what reason?" Lefebvre shrugged. "He speaks of valuable papers." "Business, he says, but he is insistent. I have assured him the Continental Express is secure." "Naturellement," Poirot said, his tone soothing. "And yet, vigilance is never misplaced. You will keep an eye on Monsieur Brant, yes?" Lefebvre nodded. "Of course. Monsieur Poirot, I wish you a pleasant evening." As the conductor departed, Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. Brant's demand for security, the leather case, the overheard argument, these were threads, small but significant. He did not yet know their pattern, but Hercule Poirot was a weaver of truths. If there was a mystery aboard this train, he would unravel it. The night deepened, and the train sped on, its wheels singing a lullaby to the sleeping passengers. Poirot changed into his silk pajamas and settled into his berth, the gentle sway of the carriage lulling him toward sleep. Yet his mind remained alert, cataloguing the faces, the voices, the glances exchanged in the dining car. Lady Harcourt's cold composure, doctor, Weiss's nervous tics, Madame Dubois' calculated charm, Miss Petrova's quiet intensity, Brant's belligerence, each was a piece of a puzzle, though the picture remained elusive. As he drifted toward sleep, Poirot's thoughts returned to the dining car, the clink of Lady Harcourt's champagne glass, the glint of Doctor, Weiss's spectacles, the rustle of Madame Dubois' gown, the mud on Miss Petrova's shoes. Wait, mud on a train? The thought jolted him awake. The corridors of the Continental Express were spotless, the platform at Paris swept clean. Where, then, had the governess found mud? Poirot sat up, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the little gray cells, they begin to work." He rose, slipped on his dressing gown, and stepped into the corridor. The train was quiet now. The passengers retired to their compartments. He moved silently, his senses alert. At the end of the carriage, he paused by compartment 7, Brant's compartment. The door was closed, the lock secure. Yet Poirot's instincts whispered of trouble, of a shadow cast across the elegance of the Continental Express. He returned to his berth, but sleep eluded him. The train hurtled through the night, carrying its passengers toward Istanbul, and, perhaps, toward a mystery that only Hercule Poirot could solve. Chapter 2. The Locked Compartment. The Continental Express thundered through the night, its rhythm a steady pulse beneath the velvet curtain of darkness. The hour was past midnight, and the train's passengers, lulled by the opulence of their surroundings and the gentle sway of the carriages, had mostly retired to their compartments. Hercule Poirot, however, lay awake in his berth, his mind restless. The anomaly of Miss Anna Petrova's muddy shoes gnawed at him, a small discord in the otherwise impeccable order of the train. He was on the verge of rising to investigate further when a sound pierced the silence, a scream, sharp and chilling, echoing from the corridor. Poirot sat bolt upright, his heart quickening not with fear, but with the instinct of a hunter sensing prey. The scream had come from the direction of the first-class compartments, near compartment 7, where Thomas Brant resided. He slipped on his dressing gown, its silk cool against his skin, and stepped into the corridor. The narrow passage was dimly lit, the brass fittings gleaming faintly under the electric lamps. Other doors began to open, and sleepy, anxious faces peered out. "What was that?" demanded Lady Evelyn Harcourt, her auburn hair loosened from its pins, her voice sharp despite the hour. She stood in the doorway of compartment 5, her silk robe clutched tightly about her. "A scream, madame," Poirot replied, his tone calm but authoritative. "We must ascertain its source." Dr. Karl Weiss emerged from compartment 6, his spectacles askew, his thin hands trembling as he adjusted his nightshirt. "It sounded like a woman," he said, his Austrian accent thickened by agitation. "Perhaps someone is injured." Madame Celeste Dubois appeared next, her blonde curls disheveled, her eyes wide with theatrical alarm. "Mon Dieu, what has happened? Is it a robbery? A murder?" Her voice carried the cadence of the stage, yet Poirot noted a flicker of genuine fear in her gaze. Miss Anna Petrova, pale and silent, stood at the far end of the corridor, her gray nightdress blending with the shadows. She said nothing, but her dark eyes followed Poirot's every move. Other passengers, minor figures in the train's tapestry, a Dutch merchant, an Italian diplomat, muttered anxiously, their voices a low hum. The conductor, Monsieur Lefebvre, hurried toward them, his uniform slightly rumpled, but his manner composed. "Messieurs, mesdames, please remain calm," he said, raising a hand. "I will investigate immediately." "The scream came from that direction," Poirot said, pointing toward compartment 7. "We must check on Monsieur Brant." Lefebvre nodded, his face tightening. He led the way, Poirot at his heels, the other passengers trailing behind like a reluctant entourage. At compartment 7, Lefebvre knocked sharply. "Monsieur Brant? Are you all right?" Silence answered, heavy and ominous. Lefebvre knocked again, then tried the handle. The door was locked. He produced a master key, his fingers fumbling slightly, and turned it in the lock. The door remained immovable. "It is bolted from within," Lefebvre said, his voice betraying a trace of panic. "This should not be possible." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Break it down, monsieur." "Time is of the essence." Lefebvre hesitated, then signaled to a burly porter who had joined them. Together they shouldered the door, the wood creaking under their efforts. With a final heave, the bolt gave way, and the door swung inward. A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. Thomas Brant lay sprawled across the compartment's floor, his pinstriped suit stained with a dark, spreading pool of blood. A dagger, its handle ornate and glinting, protruded from his chest. His eyes, wide and lifeless, stared at the ceiling. The leather case he had guarded so fiercely was gone. On the small table beside the berth lay a broken champagne glass, its shards catching the light, and a silk scarf, pale blue and embroidered with the initials C.D. Poirot, stepped forward, his movements precise, his expression unreadable. "Do not touch anything," he commanded, his voice cutting through the murmurs. He knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over the dagger without making contact. "The wound is fresh." Death occurred within the hour. Lady Harcourt clutched her robe tighter. "This is dreadful. Who could have done such a thing?" Dr. Weiss, his face ashen, pushed forward. "As a physician, I must examine him. Perhaps he still lives." Poirot raised a hand. "No, monsieur, he is beyond your skills. Observe the pallor, the stillness. Hercule Poirot knows death when he sees it." Madame Dubois let out a small sob, her hand pressed to her mouth. "It is horrible. And in a locked compartment. How could anyone enter?" Miss Petrova remained silent, her gaze fixed on the scarf. Poirot followed her eyes, noting the initials. "C.D.," he murmured. "Madame Dubois, is this yours?" The actress recoiled, her face a mask of indignation. "Mine? Certainly not. Those initials are common, Monsieur Poirot. You cannot think I would—" "I think nothing yet," Poirot interrupted smoothly. "I observe." Lefebvre, visibly shaken, mopped his brow with a handkerchief. "The door was locked and bolted, Monsieur Poirot. The key is here, on the table. No windows are open. It is impossible." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Impossible, Monsieur Lefebvre? Non, non. Impossibilities are merely possibilities that require the little gray cells to unravel." He examined the compartment with meticulous care. The berth was undisturbed, the blankets neatly folded. The broken glass suggested a struggle, yet the rest of the room was orderly. The scarf, delicate and perfumed, lay crumpled as if discarded in haste. Poirot lifted it carefully, noting its fine weave and the faint scent of jasmine. He glanced at Madame Dubois, whose perfume carried a similar note, but he said nothing. "Was anyone seen near this compartment?" Poirot asked, turning to the gathered passengers. The porter spoke up, his voice hesitant. "I saw Monsieur Brant return to his compartment after dinner. Alone. Xing Ming system. Dinner. He was alone." Poirot nodded, his eyes never leaving the scarf. "And no one else was seen?" The Dutch merchant shook his head. "I was in my compartment, asleep." The Italian diplomat, a portly man with a waxed mustache, added, "I heard nothing until the scream." "My compartment is at the other end of the carriage." Poirot turned to Lefebvre. "You will secure this compartment, monsieur. No one is to enter until the authorities are notified at the next station." Lefebvre nodded vigorously. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. I will guard it myself." Poirot addressed the passengers, his voice calm but commanding. "Return to your compartments, s'il vous plaît. There is nothing more to be done tonight." The crowd dispersed reluctantly, their whispers trailing behind them. Lady Harcourt lingered, her eyes fixed on Poirot. "You will find the murderer, Monsieur Poirot? This savagery cannot go unpunished." "Rest assured, madame," Poirot said. "Hercule Poirot does not permit crime to triumph." She nodded and departed, followed by Dr. Weiss and Madame Dubois. Miss Petrova hesitated, then approached Poirot, her voice barely audible. "Monsieur, I saw something earlier." A man, tall and shadowed, arguing with Monsieur Brant near the dining car after dinner. I could not see his face. Poirot's eyes sharpened. "When was this, mademoiselle?" "Just before 10 o'clock, she said, her hands twisting together. "I was returning to my compartment." "And you did not think to mention this sooner?" Poirot asked gently. I was afraid," she whispered. "He seemed dangerous." Poirot placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "You have done well to tell me now. Go, rest. We will speak again." She nodded and slipped away, leaving Poirot alone with Lefebvre. The conductor mopped his brow again. "This is a disaster, Monsieur Poirot. A murder on my train, the reputation of the Continental Express." "Will survive," Poirot finished. "But you must assist me, Monsieur Lefebvre." "Tell me of Monsieur Brant's request for extra security." Lefebvre swallowed. "He was most insistent. He said his leather case contained valuable papers, perhaps jewels. He demanded I check his compartment hourly." "And did you?" Poirot asked. "I did at 11 o'clock, Lefebvre said. "He was alive, alone, and the door was locked." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "Very well. We will continue in the morning. Bonsoir." As Lefebvre locked the compartment, Poirot returned to his own, his thoughts a whirlwind. The locked door, the missing key, the scarf, the broken glass, the shadowy figure, the threads of the mystery were many, but the pattern was elusive. He sat at his small desk, his notebook open, and began to write. Brant, stabbed, locked compartment, scarf, CD initials, jasmine perfume, mud on Petrova's shoes, shadowy figure, leather case missing. He paused, tapping his pen. The little gray cells were awake, and they would not rest until the truth was revealed. The train sped on, its lights cutting through the darkness, carrying a murderer among its passengers. Hercule Poirot closed his notebook and prepared for bed, a faint smile on his lips. A mystery had found him, as he knew it would, and he was ready. Chapter 3. The Passengers' Stories. The Continental Express rolled on through the pre-dawn hours, its wheels a relentless metronome against the quiet of the European countryside. The first-class carriage, however, was far from serene. The murder of Thomas Brant had cast a pall over the opulent train, and the passengers, though confined to their compartments, stirred with unease. Hercule Poirot, ever the master of order, had risen early, his attire impeccable despite the late-night disturbance. His black suit was pressed, his tie pin gleamed, and his mustache was waxed to perfection. In his compartment he sat with a cup of strong black coffee, his notebook open, his little gray cells already at work. The locked compartment, the dagger, the missing leather case, the silk scarf with the initials CD, and Miss Petrova's mysterious mud-stained shoes. These were the threads of the mystery, and Poirot was determined to weave them into a coherent pattern. He had requested Monsieur Lefebvre, the conductor, to arrange a series of interviews in the dining car, now cleared of its breakfast service and transformed into an impromptu interrogation chamber. The passengers, though reluctant, had no choice but to comply. The train was hours from its next stop, and Poirot's reputation preceded him. The dining car, with its polished mahogany tables and crystal chandeliers, seemed incongruously grand for such a grim task. Poirot took his seat at a central table, a small stack of note cards before him, each inscribed with a passenger's name and a few cryptic observations. A waiter stood by, ready to fetch the interviewees, while Lefebvre hovered near the entrance, his face etched with worry. "Bring in Lady Evelyn Harcourt first," Poirot instructed, his voice calm but firm. Lefebvre nodded and disappeared, returning moments later with the English widow. Lady Harcourt swept into the dining car, her auburn hair once again pinned beneath a severe black hat, her green eyes sharp with indignation. She sat opposite Poirot, her posture rigid, her gloved hands folded in her lap. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, her tone clipped, "this is most irregular. I am a woman of standing, not accustomed to being summoned like a common servant." Poirot inclined his head, his expression one of polite deference. "Madame, I regret the inconvenience, but a man is dead, and the truth must be found." "You were in the dining car last evening, yes?" "Of course," she replied. "I dined, as did everyone. I returned to my compartment afterward and read until I heard that dreadful scream." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you saw nothing unusual? No one near Monsieur Brant's compartment?" Lady Harcourt's lips pursed. "Nothing. I retired early. The American was loud as usual, but I paid him no mind." Poirot made a note, his pen moving with deliberate precision. "You knew Monsieur Brant?" She hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "Only by reputation. My late husband, Lord Harcourt, had dealings with men like him, businessmen always chasing profit. I found him vulgar, Poirot repeated, his tone neutral. "And yet, madame, your glance lingered on him in the dining car. Why?" Her cheeks flushed, but she recovered quickly. "I was merely curious." He was making a spectacle of himself. As always, Poirot smiled faintly. "Merci, madame. That will be all for now." Lady Harcourt rose, her dignity intact, and swept out of the car. Poirot tapped his pen against his lips, his thoughts turning to her composure, too perfect perhaps, for one confronted with murder. Next came Dr. Karl Weiss, his gaunt face paler than the night before, his spectacles slipping down his nose. He sat heavily, his hands fidgeting with a pocket watch. "Monsieur le Docteur," Poirot began, "you were in the lounge after dinner, tending to a headache, yes?" Weiss nodded, his voice unsteady. "Yes, I often suffer from migraines. The train's motion does not help. I took a sedative and sat alone." "And you saw nothing of Monsieur Brant after dinner?" Poirot asked, his eyes fixed on Weiss's trembling fingers. "Nothing," Weiss said quickly. "I was in the lounge until nearly 11, then went to my compartment." Poirot leaned forward slightly. "And the scream, doctor? You said it sounded like a woman's, yet you did not investigate immediately?" Weiss swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. I was disoriented. The sedative, you see. By the time I reached the corridor, others were already there." Poirot made another note. "You treated Monsieur Brant, did you not? As a physician?" Weiss's eyes darted to the side. "Briefly, in Paris. He complained of fatigue. I prescribed a tonic, nothing more." "Fatigue," Poirot mused. And nothing else? No. Secrets shared between doctor and patient? Weiss shook his head vigorously. No, no. He was a private man. I know nothing of his affairs. Very well, Poirot said, dismissing him. As Weiss shuffled out, Poirot circled the word nervous on his note card. The doctor's unease was palpable, but was it guilt or merely fear? Madame Celeste Dubois entered next, her presence filling the dining car like a spotlight on a stage. Her sapphire blue dress was replaced by a crimson one, its cut daring yet elegant. She sat with a flourish, her smile dazzling but calculated. "Monsieur Poirot," she purred, "you wish to interrogate the famous Celeste Dubois?" "I am flattered." Poirot's moustache twitched. "The scarf in Monsieur Brant's compartment, madame. It bears the initials C.D. A coincidence, perhaps?" Her laughter was musical, but her eyes were wary. "A coincidence indeed. Those initials are common, monsieur. That scarf could belong to anyone. I have dozens, but none are missing." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "And your movements last night, after dinner?" "I practiced my lines in my compartment," she said, her voice smooth. "A new play, very demanding. I was alone until that horrible scream." "Alone," Poirot repeated. "And yet, madame, your perfume, jasmine, yes, matches the scent on the scarf." Her smile faltered, but only for a moment. "Many women wear jasmine, Monsieur Poirot. You accuse me because I am famous? That is unfair." "The truth, madame, cares little for fame," Poirot said. "Merci. You may go." As she left, her head held high, Poirot noted her deflection. The scarf was a thread, but whether it led to her or was a deliberate misdirection, he could not yet say. Finally, Miss Anna Petrova was ushered in. The Russian governess sat stiffly, her hands clasped tightly, her dark eyes meeting Poirot's with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began gently, "you told me of a shadowy figure arguing with Monsieur Brant. Can you describe him further?" She shook her head, her voice low. "It was dark, monsieur. He was tall, perhaps in a coat. I could not see his face. They were near the dining car, by the service door." Poirot leaned forward. "And the mud on your shoes, mademoiselle? From where did it come? The train is spotless." Her hands trembled, and she looked away. I must have stepped in something before boarding. In Paris, perhaps." I did not notice." Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. "Mademoiselle, the truth is your ally. Why were you near the dining car at 10 o'clock?" "I was restless," she said, her voice barely audible. "I walked the corridors." "I saw them by chance." Poirot studied her, noting the tremor in her hands, the way her eyes avoided his. "Very well," he said. "We will speak again." As she left, Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. The passengers' stories were a tapestry of half-truths, each woven with care to conceal something. Lady Harcourt's composure, Weiss's nervousness, Dubois' theatrics, Petrova's secrecy. Each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained obscured. He summoned Lefebvre. "Monsieur, the key to compartment 7. You said it was inside, yet it is missing." Explain. Lefebvre's face reddened. "I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I saw it on a table when we broke in." "It must have been taken afterward." "Taken?" Poirot mused. "By whom? And why?" "I do not know," Lefebvre said, his voice strained. "I have searched the compartment. It is gone." Poirot nodded, dismissing him. He opened his notebook and added, "Key missing? Scarf planted? Petrova's story incomplete. Weiss conceals something. Harcourt, too, composed. The little gray cells buzzed, sensing a web of secrets tightening around the Continental Express. The truth was near, but it would require patience to unravel. The train sped on, the dawn breaking over the horizon, casting a pale light on a mystery that grew darker with each passing hour. Chapter 4. The Missing Key. The Continental Express sliced through the morning mist, its polished exterior reflecting the pale light of dawn as it wound through the rolling hills of eastern France. The passengers, though roused by the grim events of the night, maintained a veneer of civility, their breakfasts taken in near silence within the dining car. Hercule Poirot, however, had no appetite for croissants or café au lait. His mind, sharp as the dagger that had ended Thomas Brant's life, was consumed with the puzzle before him. A locked compartment, a missing key, a silk scarf, and a web of half-truths spun by the passengers. The little gray cells, as he often called them, were in full motion, and he would not rest until the truth was laid bare. Poirot stood in the corridor outside Compartment 7, now sealed by Monsieur Lefebvre's orders, its broken door guarded by a porter who stood rigidly at attention. The detective's small, neat figure was a study in precision, his black suit immaculate, his mustache perfectly symmetrical, his eyes gleaming with purpose. He had requested Lefebvre to join him, along with the key to the conductor's office, where the master keys for the train were kept. The conductor arrived, his face drawn, his uniform slightly less pristine than the previous evening. "Monsieur Poirot," Lefebvre said, his voice tinged with fatigue. "I have done as you asked. The compartment remains untouched, and I have brought the master key." "Bon," Poirot replied, his tone brisk. "We shall begin with a search for the missing key to Compartment 7. You are certain, monsieur, that you saw it on the table when we entered?" Lefebvre nodded vigorously. "I swear it, monsieur. It was there, beside the broken glass. I cannot understand how it vanished." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "The impossible, Monsieur Lefebvre, is often a matter of misdirection. Let us proceed." They moved to the conductor's office, a small utilitarian space at the end of the carriage, cluttered with ledgers, timetables, and a locked cabinet where the master keys were stored. Lefebvre opened the cabinet, revealing a row of keys, each labeled with a compartment number. The slot for Compartment 7 was conspicuously empty. "As I feared," Poirot murmured, his fingers brushing the empty slot. "The master key for Compartment 7 is also missing. This is no coincidence." Lefebvre's eyes widened. "Stolen? But how? This cabinet is locked at all times, and I alone have the key." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "And where was this key last night, monsieur?" "In my pocket," Lefebvre said, patting his jacket. "I never leave it unattended." "Never?" Poirot asked, his tone gentle but probing. "Not even for a moment?" Lefebvre hesitated, his brow furrowing. "Perhaps. When I checked the baggage car at 10 o'clock, I left my jacket in the office briefly, but the door was locked." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the detail. "We shall return to that. For now, let us search the train. The key, I think, is still aboard." They began a methodical search, starting with the dining car. Poirot examined every table, every crevice, his gloved hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. The waiters, clearing the breakfast service, watched him curiously, but he found nothing. The lounge car, with its plush armchairs and low tables, yielded no clues either. Poirot's attention lingered on a spot near the service door where Miss Petrova had claimed to see Brant arguing with a shadowy figure. He crouched, his eyes scanning the floor, but the carpet was spotless, too spotless, perhaps, for a train in motion. Next, they moved to the baggage car, a dimly lit space filled with trunks and suitcases. Poirot's eyes darted to a corner, where a small pile of dirt lay scattered, barely noticeable against the wooden floor. He knelt, his fingers hovering over the grains. "Mud," he said softly, "the same as on Mademoiselle Petrova's shoes." "Curious, no?" Lefebvre frowned. "Mud? But the baggage car is swept daily." "Précisément," Poirot said, rising. "This mud is fresh. Someone has been here, and recently he continued to search, checking beneath trunks and inside empty crates, but the key remained elusive." As they returned to the corridor, Poirot's thoughts turned to the leather case Brant had guarded so fiercely. "Monsieur Lefebvre, you mentioned Monsieur Brant's concern for his case. Did he describe its contents?" "Only vaguely," Lefebvre replied. "Papers," he said, "and perhaps something valuable." He was insistent that no one touch it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And where is this case now?" Lefebvre shook his head. "Gone, monsieur. It was not in the compartment when we found him." Poirot made a mental note, his suspicions deepening. The case, the key, the scarf, all were threads in a tapestry of deceit. He dismissed Lefebvre and returned to the dining car, where he had requested the passengers to gather once more. They arrived, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Lady Evelyn Harcourt sat first, her posture as rigid as ever. "Monsieur Poirot, have you found the murderer yet? This delay is intolerable." "Patience, madame," Poirot said. "The truth requires time." "Tell me, did you see Monsieur Brant's leather case last night?" She frowned, her gloved hands tightening. "I noticed it at dinner. He kept it close, like a child with a toy. I assumed it contained business documents." "And you saw nothing else?" Poirot pressed. "No one tampering with it?" "No," she said firmly. "I retired early, as I told you." Dr. Karl Weiss was next, his spectacles glinting nervously. "The case? I saw it, yes, but I know nothing about it. I am a doctor, not a thief." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "And yet, monsieur, you were in the lounge, near the service door where Mademoiselle Petrova saw an argument. Did you see this case after dinner?" Weiss shook his head, his hands fidgeting. "No, no. I was focused on my headache. Madame Celeste Dubois entered with her usual flair, her crimson dress replaced by a deep violet one. "The case?" she said, her voice light. "I saw it at his side, always. He was obsessed with it, but I know nothing more." "And the scarf, madame?" Poirot asked, producing the pale blue fabric from his pocket. "You maintain it is not yours?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Monsieur, I told you, those initials are common." "You will not trap me so easily." Poirot's eyes lingered on her, noting the faint scent of jasmine that clung to her presence. He turned to Miss Anna Petrova, who sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly. "Mademoiselle," he said gently, "you saw Monsieur Brant with a shadowy figure. Was this figure carrying anything? A case, perhaps?" Petrova's eyes flickered with unease. I could not see clearly. It was dark, but I think the man was empty-handed." Poirot leaned forward. "And the mud on your shoes, mademoiselle?" You say it was from Paris, yet I found fresh mud in the baggage car. Can you explain this?" Her face paled and her voice trembled. I do not know. Perhaps I walked through the baggage car earlier, by mistake." "By mistake," Poirot repeated, his tone neutral. "We shall see." He dismissed the passengers, his mind racing. The missing key suggested a deliberate act, perhaps to delay discovery or to frame another. The mud linked Petrova to the baggage car, yet her story was vague. The scarf pointed to Dubois, but its placement seemed too convenient. And the case, where was it? Poirot returned to compartment 7, now unguarded, as the porter had been called away. He examined the room again, his eyes lingering on the broken champagne glass. He picked up a shard, noting its clean break. "No struggle," he murmured. "This was staged." He moved to the door, inspecting the bolt. It was intact, but the lock showed faint scratches, as if tampered with. "A duplicate key, perhaps," he said to himself, "or a clever trick." As he stepped back into the corridor, he overheard a snatch of conversation from the lounge. Dr. Weiss, speaking to a waiter, said, "There must be a hidden panel in that compartment." It's the only explanation. Poirot's mustache twitched. A hidden panel? He returned to compartment 7 and tapped the walls, his knuckles testing every inch. The panels were solid, the construction flawless. "No panel," he said, "but the idea, it is interesting." He summoned Lefebvre once more. "Monsieur, have any passengers requested access to the baggage car?" Lefebvre shook his head. "No, monsieur. Only the porters and I go there." "And yet," Poirot said, "there is mud. We must search again, but with care." The morning wore on, the train speeding toward its next stop. Poirot's suspicions grew, his mind weaving the threads of the mystery. The missing key, the mud, the scarf, the case, the shadowy figure. Each passenger had a story, but none rang entirely true. The little gray cells buzzed, sensing a deeper truth hidden beneath the surface of the Continental Express. Chapter 5. A Second Clue. The Continental Express pressed onward through the undulating landscape of Central Europe, its polished exterior cutting through a morning fog that clung to the fields like a ghostly shroud. The air inside the train, however, was thick with suspicion. The elegance of its mahogany-paneled corridors and crystal-lit dining car overshadowed by the specter of murder. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the restless night, stood in the dining car, his small frame a beacon of calm amid the passengers' unease. His black suit was as pristine as ever, his mustache a testament to his unwavering commitment to order, even in chaos. The little gray cells, as he called them, were alight with purpose, piecing together the fragments of the mystery. A locked compartment, a missing key, a silk scarf, and the elusive leather case of the late Thomas Brant. Poirot had requested the dining car be cleared once more, its tables now bare of their usual linens, transforming the space into a stage for his investigation. The passengers, though weary, complied with his summons, their faces a gallery of guarded expressions. Lady Evelyn Harcourt sat with her usual hauteur, her emerald eyes scanning the room with disdain. Dr. Karl Weiss fidgeted with his spectacles, his gaunt face etched with nervous tension. Madame Celeste Dubois, resplendent in a gown of deep emerald, maintained her theatrical poise, though her smile was strained. Miss Anna Petrova, the quiet governess, sat apart, her dark eyes fixed on her clasped hands, her plain gray dress a stark contrast to the opulence around her. Monsieur Lefebvre, the conductor, hovered near the entrance, his anxiety palpable as he wrung his hands. Poirot's attention, however, was drawn to a discovery he had made just before calling the passengers. While inspecting the dining-car service area, near the spot where Miss Petrova had claimed to see Brant arguing with a shadowy figure, he had found a torn ticket stub wedged beneath a table's edge. It was marked Vienna, Paris, its edges frayed as if torn in haste. He held the stub in his gloved hand, turning it over thoughtfully. None of the passengers had admitted to traveling from Vienna, yet here was evidence suggesting otherwise. The little gray cells hummed with possibility. He addressed the group, his voice clear and measured. "Messieurs, mesdames, we progress in our pursuit of the truth. A new clue has emerged, and I require your candor. This ticket stub, found in the dining car, indicates a journey from Vienna to Paris. Who among you has traveled this route?" A murmur rippled through the group, but no one spoke. Lady Harcourt's lips tightened, and she adjusted her gloves with deliberate care. Dr. Weiss's face paled, his fingers pausing on his pocket watch. Madame Dubois raised a delicate eyebrow, her expression one of mild curiosity. Miss Petrova's gaze remained fixed on her hands, though her shoulders tensed imperceptibly. Poirot's eyes swept the room, noting each reaction. "No one claims this ticket? Very well, we shall return to it. For now, let us consider another matter. Monsieur Brant, it is said, carried a valuable sapphire in his leather case. This jewel is missing, as is the case itself. Does anyone know of this sapphire?" Lady Harcourt spoke first, her voice sharp. "A sapphire? I heard rumors in Paris of Brant's dealings in precious stones, but I know nothing of it. He was a crude man, always boasting of his wealth." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Dr. Weiss. "And you, monsieur?" As his physician, did he speak of such a jewel? Weiss shook his head, his voice unsteady. No. He spoke only of business papers. I prescribed tonics, nothing more." Madame Dubois laughed softly, her tone mocking. "A sapphire? How romantic! But I saw only his tiresome case, always at his side. Perhaps he was smuggling it, no?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Smuggling, madame? An interesting theory. And you, Mademoiselle Petrova? Did you hear of this sapphire in your observations?" Petrova's eyes flicked up, meeting his briefly. "I heard nothing of a sapphire, monsieur. I saw only the case. As I told you." Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Very well. Let us discuss your movements after dinner. Madame Dubois, you were practicing lines, yes?" "Oui," she replied, her smile radiant but guarded. "In my compartment, alone. I am preparing for a new play in Istanbul." "And you, doctor?" Poirot asked, turning to Weiss. "I was in the lounge, as I said," Weiss replied, his voice tight. "My headache kept me there until nearly 11. Poirot's gaze shifted to Lady Harcourt. "And you, madame? Reading in your compartment?" "Precisely," she said, her tone icy. "I have no interest in the comings and goings of others." Poirot turned to Petrova, his voice gentle but probing. "Mademoiselle, you saw a shadowy figure arguing with Monsieur Brant. You were near the dining car at 10 o'clock. Why were you there?" Petrova's hands trembled slightly. "I was restless, monsieur. I walked the corridors to clear my mind. I saw them by chance." Poirot made a note, his pen scratching softly. The ticket stub, the sapphire, the shadowy figure, all were threads in a tapestry of deception. He dismissed the passengers, retaining Lefebvre for a private word. Monsieur Lefebvre, Poirot said, holding up the ticket stub, this was found near the service door. Have any passengers declared a journey from Vienna? Lefebvre shook his head, his brow furrowed. No, monsieur. All first-class passengers boarded in Paris, according to the manifest. Interesting, Poirot murmured. And the baggage car, has anyone accessed it since last night? Only the porters, Lefebvre said. And myself, to check the luggage. Poirot nodded, dismissing him. He returned to the dining car's service area, his eyes scanning the floor once more. The ticket stub was a clue, but its significance was unclear. Was it dropped by the killer? By Brant himself? Or was it a deliberate misdirection? He moved to the lounge car, where a waiter was polishing glasses. Monsieur, Poirot said, you were on duty last night. Did you see anyone near the service door after dinner? The waiter, a young man with a nervous smile, hesitated. I saw Monsieur Brant, monsieur. He was speaking to someone, but I could not see who. It was dark, and I was busy. And this person, tall perhaps? In a coat? Poirot asked, recalling Petrova's description. Perhaps, the waiter said, his eyes darting away. I did not look closely. Poirot thanked him and continued his inspection. In a corner of the lounge, he noticed a faint smudge on the carpet, barely visible. He crouched, his gloved fingers tracing the mark. It was mud, identical to that found in the baggage car and on Petrova's shoes. Mon Dieu, he murmured. The threads, they multiply. He returned to compartment 7, now unguarded, as the porter had been reassigned. The room was as he had left it. The broken glass, the silk scarf, the blood-stained floor. He examined the scarf again, its jasmine scent stronger now. He recalled Madame Dubois' perfume, but also noted a similar fragrance on Lady Harcourt during their earlier interview. A coincidence? Or a deliberate plant? Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by a commotion in the corridor. Lady Harcourt's voice, sharp and accusing, rang out. That Russian girl is not what she seems. I saw her lurking near the baggage car this morning. She's a spy, I tell you. Poirot stepped into the corridor where Lady Harcourt stood, her face flushed, confronting Miss Petrova. The governess's eyes were wide with fear, her hands clasped tightly. Madame, Poirot said calmly, what is this accusation? Lady Harcourt turned to him, her voice trembling with indignation. I saw her, Monsieur Poirot, skulking near the baggage-car door. She has no business there. Petrova's voice was barely audible. I was lost, monsieur. I took a wrong turn. Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone was firm. Mademoiselle, you must be more careful. The baggage car is not a place for passengers. As Lady Harcourt stormed off, Poirot escorted Petrova back to her compartment. Mademoiselle, he said quietly, the truth is your shield. If you know more, you must tell me. She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. I will, monsieur. I promise alone again. Poirot returned to the dining car, his notebook open. He added, ticket stub, Vienna, Paris, sapphire missing, mud in lounge, baggage car, Petrova's shoes. Harcourt accuses Petrova, Dubois' perfume, or Harcourt's. The little gray cells buzzed, sensing a conspiracy beneath the surface. The Continental Express, with its glittering facade, was a stage for deception, and Poirot was determined to unmask the players. Chapter 6. Hidden Motives. The Continental Express continued its relentless journey through the European landscape, the morning sun casting long shadows across the rolling hills as the train snaked toward its next stop. Within the opulent confines of the first-class carriage, however, the atmosphere was heavy with suspicion, the air thick with secrets yet to be unveiled. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a picture of meticulous precision in his immaculate black suit, stood in the lounge car, his sharp eyes scanning the plush surroundings. The murder of Thomas Brant had woven a tapestry of intrigue, and the threads, the missing key, the silk scarf, the torn ticket stub, the elusive leather case, and the mysterious mud were beginning to form a pattern in the detective's mind. The little gray cells, ever active, hummed with the promise of revelation, though the truth remained tantalizingly out of reach. Poirot had spent the morning poring over his notes, cross-referencing the passengers' statements with the physical evidence. The ticket stub from Vienna to Paris, the jasmine-scented scarf with the initials CD, and the mud linking Miss Petrova to the baggage car were all pieces of a puzzle, but the motive for Brant's murder eluded him. He knew that to unravel the mystery, he must dig deeper into the lives of the passengers, for murder, as he often said, was never without motive. He had requested Monsieur Lefebvre to arrange another round of private interviews, this time in the conductor's office, a cramped but private space where Poirot could observe each passenger without the distractions of the dining car's grandeur. The office, with its narrow desk and shelves of ledgers, was a stark contrast to the train's opulence. Poirot sat behind the desk, his notebook open, his pen poised. Lefebvre stood by the door, his face etched with the strain of the past hours, his once pristine uniform now slightly creased. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low, "the passengers are growing restless. They demand answers, and answers they shall have," Poirot replied, his tone calm but resolute. "But first I must understand their secrets. Bring in Lady Evelyn Harcourt." Lefebvre nodded and returned moments later with the English widow. Lady Harcourt entered with her characteristic hauteur, her auburn hair pinned tightly beneath a black velvet hat, her green eyes cold and unyielding. She sat, her gloved hands folded, her posture a study in controlled disdain. "Madame," Poirot began, his voice smooth, "we have spoken of your movements, but not of your connection to Monsieur Brant. You said your late husband had dealings with men like him. What dealings, précisément?" Lady Harcourt's lips tightened, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "My husband, Lord Harcourt, was a financier. He invested in ventures across Europe, some involving American businessmen like Brant. They were not always reputable. I believe Brant was part of a consortium that left my husband bankrupt before his death." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Bankrupt? A motive, perhaps, for resentment. She bristled. "I am not a woman driven by petty grudges, Monsieur Poirot. I had no personal dealings with Brant. His death is shocking, but it does not concern me." "And yet," Poirot said, leaning forward, "your composure is remarkable for one so uninvolved. Did you see Brant with his leather case after dinner?" "No," she said sharply. "I told you I retired early." Poirot made a note, his pen scratching softly. "Merci, madame. That will be all for now." As she departed, Poirot circled the word bankruptcy in his notebook. A financial grudge could be a powerful motive, and Lady Harcourt's icy demeanor suggested more than she was willing to reveal. Dr. Karl Weiss entered next, his gaunt face paler than before, his spectacles slipping down his nose. He sat heavily, his hands clutching his medical bag as if it were a shield. "Monsieur le Docteur," Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing, "you treated Monsieur Brant in Paris. For fatigue, you said. But was there more? An illness, perhaps, that made him vulnerable?" Weiss's fingers tightened on the bag. "He was overworked, nothing more. I prescribed a sedative to help him sleep. He was a difficult patient, always secretive." "Secretive," Poirot repeated. "And did he speak of his business? Of a sapphire, perhaps?" Weiss shook his head, his voice unsteady. "No, nothing of jewels. He mentioned papers, contracts. He was agitated, but he would not explain why Poirot's gaze lingered on the doctor's trembling hands. "And your ticket stub, monsieur, from Vienna to Paris. You did not mention this journey. Why?" Weiss's face flushed, and he looked away. "It was personal. I visited a colleague in Vienna, a medical conference. I did not think it relevant." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Everything is relevant in a murder, monsieur. You were in the lounge near the service door. Did you see this shadowy figure Mademoiselle Petrova described?" "No," Weiss said quickly. "I was focused on my headache." "I saw nothing." Poirot dismissed him, noting the doctor's evasiveness. The sedative, the Vienna trip, the nervous demeanor. Weiss was hiding something, but whether it was guilt or fear remained unclear. Madame Celeste Dubois swept in next, her presence as commanding as ever. Her violet gown was replaced by one of soft lavender, its elegance undercut by the tension in her eyes. She sat with a flourish, her smile a mask of confidence. "Madame," Poirot said, holding up the silk scarf, "this was found in Monsieur Brant's compartment. The initials CD are yours, no? And the jasmine scent, it matches your perfume." Her laughter was bright, but brittle. "Monsieur Poirot, you are persistent. I told you, those initials are common. And jasmine is a popular scent. I was in my compartment, practicing lines. I did not see Brant after dinner. And yet," Poirot said, "you were seen with him in Paris, madame. A romantic liaison, perhaps?" Her smile faltered, and a flush crept up her neck. "A passing flirtation, nothing more. It ended weeks ago. He was charming, but tiresome. I had no reason to harm him." Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. "And the sapphire, madame? Did he speak of it?" "No," she said firmly. "He spoke only of his business, always business. I cared little for it." Poirot dismissed her, his mind turning to the scarf. Its placement seemed too deliberate, a red herring to point suspicion at Dubois. But who had placed it? Miss Anna Petrova entered last, her pale face drawn, her dark eyes wary. She sat stiffly, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you are a governess, yes? Yet your references are vague. Who employs you?" Petrova's voice was barely audible. I work for a family in Istanbul. They are private people. I do not wish to trouble them." Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone was firm. "And the mud on your shoes, the mud in the baggage car, you have no explanation?" She shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was confused, monsieur. I wandered into the baggage car by mistake. I am not used to such trains." Poirot studied her, noting her fear. "And the shadowy figure? You saw nothing more?" "No," she whispered. "I swear it." He dismissed her, his mind racing. Petrova's story was flimsy, her fear genuine. Was she a pawn or a player in this game? Poirot turned to Lefebvre, who had remained silent. "Monsieur, I require access to Monsieur Brant's luggage. There may be more clues. Lefebvre led him to the baggage car, where Brant's trunk sat among the others. Poirot opened it, revealing neatly folded clothes, a few books, and a small locked box. With Lefebvre's permission, he pried it open, revealing a coded telegram. Istanbul, midnight. Sapphire secure. Trust no one. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A rendezvous, he murmured, and a betrayal. As they returned to the corridor, a waiter approached, his face pale. "Monsieur Poirot, I must speak." "I saw Dr. Weiss near compartment 7 at midnight." He was pacing, looking anxious. Poirot's mustache twitched. "Merci, monsieur. This is most helpful." He added to his notebook, Harcourt's bankruptcy, Weiss's sedative, Vienna trip, Dubois' affair, Petrova's vague references, coded telegram, Weiss near compartment 7. The web of secrets was tightening, and Poirot sensed the truth was close. The Continental Express, with its glittering facade, was a stage for deception, and he was determined to unmask the murderer before the final curtain fell. Chapter 7. The train stops. The Continental Express, that paragon of elegance and precision, came to an abrupt halt in the heart of the Alps, its wheels silenced by a sudden snowstorm that blanketed the tracks in a thick, unyielding white. The morning light, already dimmed by the swirling snow, cast an eerie glow through the windows of the first-class carriage, where the passengers sat in a state of restless agitation. The murder of Thomas Brant had transformed the train from a haven of luxury into a gilded cage, and the unexpected stop only heightened the tension. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of calm amidst the growing unease, stood in the lounge car, his sharp eyes scanning the passengers as they murmured their complaints. His black suit remained impeccable, his mustache a testament to his unyielding commitment to order. But the little gray cells were working overtime, weaving together the threads of a mystery that grew more intricate with each passing hour. The dining car, now a makeshift council chamber, was crowded with passengers, their faces a gallery of frustration and fear. Lady Evelyn Harcourt sat with her usual hauteur, her gloved hands gripping a teacup as if it were an anchor. Dr. Karl Weiss, his spectacles fogged from the cold, fidgeted nervously, his medical bag clutched tightly. Madame Celeste Dubois, her lavender gown replaced by a fur-trimmed coat, maintained her theatrical poise, though her eyes darted to the snow-covered windows. Miss Anna Petrova sat apart, her pale face drawn, her dark eyes fixed on the floor. Monsieur Lefebvre, the conductor, moved among them, his voice strained as he attempted to restore calm. "Messieurs, mesdames," Lefebvre announced, his hands raised. "The snow has blocked the tracks. The crew is working to clear them, but we may be delayed for several hours. Please, remain calm." Lady Harcourt's voice cut through the murmurs. "This is intolerable. First a murder, now we are stranded. What sort of operation is this?" Lefebvre flushed, but before he could respond, Poirot stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. "Madame, the elements are beyond our control, but the truth is not. While we wait, I shall continue my investigation. The murderer is among us, and Hercule Poirot will find them." A ripple of unease passed through the group, and Poirot's eyes swept over them, noting each reaction. Lady Harcourt's lips tightened, Weiss's hands trembled, Dubois' smile faltered, and Petrova's gaze remained fixed on her hands. The coded telegram found in Brant's luggage, hinting at a rendezvous in Istanbul, and a valuable sapphire had deepened the mystery and the waiter's claim of seeing Dr. Weiss near compartment 7 at midnight added another layer of suspicion. Poirot knew that the truth lay in the motives hidden beneath the passengers' polished exteriors. He turned pleased, turning to Lefebvre. "Monsieur, I require your assistance in the baggage car. We must search for Monsieur Brant's leather case." Lefebvre nodded, his face pale. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. But the baggage car is locked, and only the porters and I have access." "Bon," Poirot said, "then we shall be thorough." They made their way to the baggage car, the cold air biting as they passed through the unheated connecting corridor. The baggage car was a cavernous space, filled with trunks and suitcases stacked in orderly rows. Poirot's eyes scanned the area, lingering on the spot where he had previously found fresh mud. He began a methodical search, opening crates and inspecting the contents of bags, while Lefebvre stood by, his anxiety palpable. "Was Monsieur Brant's case distinctive?" Poirot asked, his gloved hands carefully sifting through a pile of luggage. "Black leather, with brass fittings," Lefebvre said. "He was very particular about it." Poirot nodded, his attention drawn to a large trunk in the corner. He opened it, revealing a collection of men's clothing, but no leather case. He moved to another stack, his movements precise, until he paused at a small, nondescript suitcase tucked behind a crate. He opened it and found a black leather case, its brass fittings gleaming faintly in the dim light. He lifted it out, his heart quickening. "This is it?" he asked Lefebvre. The conductor nodded. "Yes, monsieur. That is Monsieur Brant's case." Poirot opened it, revealing nothing but a single pearl nestled in a velvet lining. The sapphire, the papers, everything else was gone. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the prize has been taken." Lefebvre gasped. "But how?" "The baggage car is secure." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Secure, yet someone entered and left mud, as Mademoiselle Petrova did on her shoes." He closed the case and handed it to Lefebvre. "Keep this safe." We returned to the lounge. Back in the lounge car, Poirot summoned the passengers once more. The snowstorm raged outside, the windows now almost entirely obscured by white. The passengers gathered, their faces a mixture of impatience and dread. "Monsieur Poirot," Lady Harcourt said, her voice sharp, "have you found the murderer yet?" "This delay is unbearable." "Patience, madame," Poirot replied. "I have found Monsieur Brant's leather case, but it is empty, save for a single pearl. The sapphire is missing, as is the key to compartment 7. Someone on this train is playing a clever game." A murmur of shock rippled through the group. Dr. Weiss's face turned ashen, his hands clutching his medical bag. "A pearl? But the sapphire was the true value, yes?" "Précisément," Poirot said, "and its absence suggests a motive." "Who among you knew of this jewel?" Madame Dubois spoke up, her voice tinged with mockery. "Monsieur Brant was always boasting of his wealth." "A sapphire would not surprise me, but I know nothing of it." Poirot's gaze shifted to her. "And the scarf?" "Madame? The jasmine scent lingers, and I have noticed it on another." He glanced at Lady Harcourt, whose face remained impassive, though her fingers tightened on her teacup. "You suspect me?" Lady Harcourt said coldly. "I have no connection to this vulgar American or his jewels." Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone was firm. "Yet your perfume, madame, is jasmine, like the scarf." "A coincidence, perhaps. Her eyes flashed with anger, but before she could respond, Miss Petrova spoke, her voice trembling. "Monsieur Poirot, I heard rumors in Paris about Brant's sapphire. They said it was stolen, part of a smuggling ring." Poirot turned to her, his interest piqued. "A smuggling ring, mademoiselle? And how did you come by this information?" I overheard it," she said, her eyes darting away. "In a café, before boarding the train." Poirot made a note, his pen moving swiftly. "Most interesting. And did you see anyone with Brant's case after dinner?" "No," she whispered. "I saw only the shadowy figure, as I told you." The waiter who had spoken earlier approached, his face nervous. "Monsieur Poirot, I must clarify. I saw a doctor. Weiss near compartment 7, but it was closer to 11:30, not midnight. I was mistaken." Weiss's face reddened. "I told you, I was in the lounge." "This is absurd." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Merci, monsieur. Accuracy is vital." As the passengers dispersed, Lady Harcourt fainted dramatically, collapsing into a chair. "This is too much," she cried, her hand pressed to her forehead. "The fear, the confinement, it is unbearable." Poirot knelt beside her, his eyes sharp. "Madame, you are safe. But tell me, did you truly see nothing of Brant's case?" Her eyes fluttered open, and she glared at him. "I told you, no." Poirot nodded, rising. He returned to the conductor's office, his notebook open. He added, "Leather case found, empty, save for pearl. Sapphire missing. Smuggling ring, Harcourt's jasmine, Dubois' scarf. Weiss's timing corrected. Petrova's rumors. The snowstorm had trapped them, but it had also given Poirot time. The web of secrets was tightening, and the little gray cells were closing in on the truth. Chapter 8. The Alibi Crumbles. The Continental Express remained stranded in the Alps, its elegant carriages enveloped by a relentless snowstorm that blanketed the world outside in an unyielding white. The passengers, confined within the opulent prison of the train, grew increasingly restless, their nerves frayed by the specter of murder and the uncertainty of their delay. Hercule Poirot, however, thrived in such tension, his small, immaculate figure a beacon of calm amidst the chaos. His black suit was as pristine as ever, his mustache a testament to his unwavering commitment to order, and his sharp eyes gleamed with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the truth was within reach. The little gray cells were in full motion, piecing together the threads of the mystery, the locked compartment, the missing key, the silk scarf with the initials CD, the torn ticket stub, the empty leather case, and the whispers of a smuggled sapphire. Each clue was a thread, and Poirot was determined to weave them into a tapestry of truth. The lounge car, with its plush armchairs and polished brass fittings, had become Poirot's temporary headquarters. The passengers, though reluctant, had gathered at his request, their faces a gallery of suspicion and unease. Lady Evelyn Harcourt sat with her characteristic hauteur, her auburn hair pinned tightly, her green eyes cold but watchful. Dr. Karl Weiss, his spectacles slipping down his nose, clutched his medical bag, his gaunt face etched with anxiety. Madame Celeste Dubois, her fur-trimmed coat replaced by a gown of deep burgundy, maintained her theatrical poise, though her smile was strained. Miss Anna Petrova, pale and withdrawn, sat apart, her dark eyes fixed on her clasped hands. Monsieur Lefebvre, the conductor, stood near the entrance, his once authoritative demeanor eroded by the weight of the crisis. Poirot's latest discovery weighed heavily on his mind. While inspecting the lounge car earlier, he had found a hidden knife tucked beneath a cushion, its blade smeared with what appeared to be blood, but upon closer inspection proved to be red jam. The knife was a deliberate red herring planted to mislead, but by whom? The coded telegram from Brant's luggage, hinting at a rendezvous in Istanbul and a sapphire, suggested a deeper conspiracy, and the waiter's corrected testimony that Dr. Weiss was near Compartment 7 at 11:30, not midnight, had cast further doubt on the doctor's alibi. Poirot knew that the time had come to press harder, to unravel the lies that cloaked the murderer. He addressed the group, his voice clear and commanding. "Messieurs, mesdames, the storm delays us, but it does not delay the truth. I have found a knife hidden in this very car, smeared with jam to mimic blood. A crude attempt to mislead, but it tells me the murderer is cunning. Let us revisit your alibis, for one of you is not truthful." A murmur of protest rose, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. He turned to Dr. Weiss, whose face had turned ashen. "Monsieur le Docteur, you were seen near Compartment 7 at 11:30. You claimed to be in the lounge, suffering from a headache, yet the waiter's testimony contradicts you. Explain." Weiss's hands trembled, his voice unsteady. I may have stepped into the corridor briefly. The sedative made me restless. I was not near Compartment 7, I swear it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the ticket stub from Vienna to Paris? You admitted to this journey, yet concealed it initially. Why?" Weiss's spectacles glinted as he looked away. "I told you it was a medical conference. I did not wish to be involved in this madness." Poirot made a note, his pen scratching softly. "And the sedative you prescribed for Monsieur Brant, what was it?" "A mild barbiturate," Weiss said, his voice barely audible, "to help him sleep." He was agitated, always talking of his business. Poirot's mustache twitched. Agitated. And did he speak of a sapphire? Or a smuggling ring? "No," Weiss said, his voice rising. "He spoke only of contracts, nothing more." Poirot dismissed him, his mind cataloguing the doctor's evasiveness. He turned to Madame Dubois, whose smile was a mask of charm. "Madame, you admitted to a flirtation with Monsieur Brant in Paris. Yet you claim it ended weeks ago. Was there more to your relationship?" Dubois laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Monsieur Poirot, you are relentless. Yes, I flirted with him. He was wealthy, charming in his crude way, but it was nothing serious. I had no reason to harm him." "And the scarf," Poirot said, holding it up, "with your initials and your jasmine perfume?" Her smile faltered. "I told you it is not mine. Someone wishes to implicate me, no?" Poirot leaned forward, his tone gentle but probing. "And who, madame, would wish to do so?" "I do not know," she said, her eyes flashing. "Perhaps that Russian girl, always watching, always silent." Poirot's gaze shifted to Miss Petrova, who sat trembling, her face pale. "Mademoiselle, you spoke of a smuggling ring. You claim to have overheard this in a café. Yet your story is vague, your references as a governess questionable. Who are you truly?" Petrova's eyes filled with tears, and she stood, her voice breaking. "I am not a governess, monsieur. I am a journalist investigating Monsieur Brant's dealings. He was smuggling jewels, I am certain of it. He threatened to ruin me if I exposed him." A gasp rippled through the group. Lady Harcourt's eyes widened, and she leaned forward. "A journalist? Then you were spying on us all." Petrova shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, only Brant. I saw him with that shadowy figure, and I followed them to the dining car. I was afraid. Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. And the mud on your shoes, mademoiselle? The mud in the baggage car? You were there, were you not? I went to look for evidence, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I thought his case might hold proof of his smuggling. Poirot made a note, his mind racing. Petrova's confession was a breakthrough, but it raised new questions. Was she a victim or a conspirator? He turned to Lady Harcourt, whose composure had cracked, her hands trembling slightly. "Madame," he said, "you accused Mademoiselle Petrova of being a spy. Did you know of her true identity?" "No," Harcourt said sharply, "but I saw her near the baggage car, as I told you." "She is not to be trusted." Poirot nodded, dismissing the group. He remained in the lounge, his notebook open, his thoughts swirling. Petrova's revelation explained the mud and her secrecy, but it did not clear her of suspicion. The knife, smeared with jam, was a clumsy attempt to mislead, and the scarf's placement pointed to a deliberate frame. Weiss's corrected alibi and Dubois' flirtation added further complexity. He summoned Lefebvre, who entered, his face drawn. "Monsieur Poirot, the crew is clearing the tracks, but it will take time. Have you made progress?" "Oui," Poirot said, "but I require your candor." "The baggage car? Who has access besides you and the porters?" "No one," Lefebvre said, his voice firm. "The door is locked, and I hold the key." "And yet," Poirot said, "the case was there, and mud was found." "Someone entered." Monsieur Lefebvre's face paled. I cannot explain it." Poirot dismissed him, his mind turning to the telegram. "Istanbul, midnight. Sapphire secure. Trust no one." The words suggested a betrayal, a partner turned enemy. He added to his notebook, "Petrova, journalist, investigating smuggling. Knife, red herring. Weiss's alibi weak. Dubois' affair. Harcourt's knowledge of Petrova." The snowstorm had trapped them, but it had also given Poirot time to unravel the web. The truth was close, and the little gray cells would not rest until it was revealed. Chapter 9. The Web Tightens. The Continental Express remained ensnared in the Alpine snowstorm, its luxurious carriages a gilded cage for passengers now steeped in suspicion and dread. The snow fell relentlessly, obscuring the windows and muffling the world outside, while within, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Hercule Poirot stood in the dining car, his small, impeccable figure, a bastion of calm amidst the growing unrest. His black suit was pristine, his mustache perfectly waxed, and his sharp eyes gleamed with the quiet certainty of a man closing in on the truth. The little gray cells were alight, weaving together the threads of the mystery. The locked compartment, the missing key, the silk scarf with the initials CD, the torn ticket stub, the empty leather case with its solitary pearl, the coded telegram, and the planted knife smeared with jam. Each clue pointed to a deeper conspiracy, and Poirot was determined to unravel it before the train resumed its journey. The dining car, cleared of its usual finery, had become Poirot's stage, its mahogany tables and crystal chandeliers a stark contrast to the grim purpose of the gathering. The passengers sat in a semicircle, their faces a gallery of unease. Lady Evelyn Harcourt maintained her haughty composure, her auburn hair pinned tightly, her green eyes cold but watchful. Dr. Karl Weiss, his gaunt face paler than ever, clutched his medical bag, his spectacles slipping down his nose. Madame Celeste Dubois, resplendent in a gown of deep indigo, wore her theatrical charm like armor, though her smile was strained. Miss Anna Petrova, her pale face drawn, sat apart, her dark eyes flickering with fear. Monsieur Lefebvre, the conductor, stood near the entrance, his once authoritative demeanor eroded by the weight of the crisis. Poirot stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding. "Messieurs, mesdames, the snow holds us captive, but it also grants us time to seek the truth. The murder of Monsieur Thomas Brant was no random act. It was planned, executed with precision, and cloaked in deception. The little gray cells have been at work, and I am close to unmasking the killer. Let us review the facts." He held up the silk scarf, its pale blue fabric catching the light. "This scarf, found in the locked compartment, bears the initials CD and the scent of jasmine. It points to Madame Dubois, yet she denies ownership. Is it hers, or was it placed to mislead?" Dubois' eyes flashed, her voice sharp. "I have told you, Monsieur Poirot, it is not mine. Someone seeks to frame me." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Lady Harcourt. "And yet, Madame Harcourt, your perfume also carries the scent of jasmine." A coincidence, perhaps? Harcourt's lips tightened, her gloved hands clenching. "You dare accuse me? I have no connection to that vulgar American or his scarf." Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. "I accuse no one, yet. Let us consider the key to Compartment 7, missing, despite Monsieur Lefebvre's claim it was inside. The master key, too, is gone from the conductor's office. This suggests a deliberate act, a plan to lock the door and create the illusion of impossibility." Lefebvre's face reddened. "I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I saw the key. It must have been taken after we broke in." "Précisément," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "Taken by the killer, who needed time to escape suspicion. And then there is the leather case, found in the baggage car, empty, save for a single pearl. The sapphire, the true prize, is gone. Monsieur Brant was part of a smuggling ring, as Mademoiselle Petrova has revealed. His telegram spoke of a rendezvous in Istanbul and warned to trust no one. Someone betrayed him." A murmur rippled through the group. Dr. Weiss's hands trembled, and he adjusted his spectacles nervously. "A smuggling ring? I knew nothing of this. I treated him for fatigue, nothing more." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "And yet, monsieur, you were seen near Compartment 7 at 11:30, not in the lounge as you claimed. Your ticket stub from Vienna to Paris suggests a past you wish to conceal. What is it?" Weiss's voice cracked. "I told you, it was a medical conference. I have no secrets." Poirot turned to Petrova, whose face was pale with fear. "Mademoiselle, you are a journalist, not a governess. You investigated Monsieur Brant's smuggling. Did you know of the sapphire?" Petrova's hands twisted together, her voice barely audible. "I heard rumors, monsieur. I followed him to gather proof. I saw him with that shadowy figure, but I swear I did not kill him." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "And the mud on your shoes, found also in the baggage car. You admit to entering there, seeking evidence. But did you take the case?" "No," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "I looked, but I found nothing." The group erupted in accusations. Lady Harcourt pointed at Petrova. "She's a liar, a spy, sneaking into places she doesn't belong." Dubois joined in, her voice mocking. Or perhaps it was Dr. Weiss, skulking near the compartment, He prescribed sedatives, perhaps to weaken Brant. Weiss stood, his face flushed. "This is outrageous. I am a physician, not a murderer. Perhaps it was you, Madame Dubois, with your affair and your scarf." The chaos grew, voices overlapping, until Poirot clapped his hands sharply, restoring silence. "Enough. The truth is not found in accusations, but in facts. The knife, smeared with jam, was a clumsy attempt to mislead. The scarf was planted to implicate Madame Dubois. The key was taken to create the locked room illusion, and the sapphire was the motive, stolen by one who knew its value." He paused, his eyes sweeping the group, lingering on Lefebvre, who stood silently, his face pale. "Monsieur Lefebvre," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, "you have been most cooperative, yet you are quiet now. You insisted the key was in the compartment. You alone had access to the master key. Tell me, did you check Monsieur Brant's compartment as he requested?" Lefebvre nodded, his voice strained. "Yes, at 11 o'clock. He was alive, alone, the door locked." "And the baggage car?" Poirot asked. "You entered it, yet found no case until I did." "Curious, no?" Lefebvre's hands trembled. I did my duty, Monsieur Poirot. I know nothing of the case." Poirot's mustache twitched, but he said nothing more. He dismissed the passengers, his mind a whirlwind of suspicion. The scarf, the key, the case, the telegram, all pointed to a calculated murder, orchestrated by someone with intimate knowledge of the train and its passengers. Lefebvre's silence, his access to the keys, his presence in the baggage car, these were threads that tugged at Poirot's instincts. He returned to the conductor's office, his notebook open, his pen moving swiftly. He added, "Scarf planted to frame Dubois, key taken to create illusion, sapphire motive, smuggling confirmed, Weiss near compartment 7, Petrova's investigation, Lefebvre's silence." The web was tightening, and Poirot sensed the killer was close to being unmasked. The snowstorm, though a hindrance, had given him time, and the little gray cells were poised to deliver the truth. Chapter 10. The Shocking Truth. The Continental Express remained immobilized in the Alpine snowstorm, its opulent carriages shrouded in a white veil that mirrored the secrecy cloaking the murder of Thomas Brant. The passengers, trapped within the train's luxurious confines, were a cauldron of suspicion and fear, their nerves frayed by the relentless probing of Hercule Poirot. The diminutive Belgian detective stood in the dining car, his black suit immaculate, his mustache a perfect curve of waxed precision, his sharp eyes gleaming with the certainty of a man who had unraveled the threads of a complex mystery. The little gray cells had worked tirelessly, weaving together the clues: the locked compartment, the missing key, the silk scarf with the initials CD, the torn ticket stub, the empty leather case with its solitary pearl, the coded telegram, and the knife smeared with jam. Each piece had pointed to a deeper truth, and now Poirot was ready to unveil the killer. The dining car, its chandeliers casting a soft glow over the mahogany tables, was filled with the passengers, their faces a gallery of apprehension. Lady Evelyn Harcourt sat with her usual hauteur, her auburn hair pinned tightly, her green eyes cold but watchful. Dr. Karl Weiss clutched his medical bag, his gaunt face pale, his spectacles slipping down his nose. Madame Celeste Dubois, resplendent in a gown of deep indigo, maintained her theatrical poise, though her smile was brittle. Miss Anna Petrova, her pale face drawn, sat apart, her dark eyes brimming with fear. Monsieur Lefebvre, the conductor, stood near the entrance, his once confident demeanor replaced by a nervous fidgeting that did not escape Poirot's notice. Poirot stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding, cutting through the murmur of the gathered passengers. "Messieurs, mesdames, the time has come to reveal the truth behind the murder of Monsieur Thomas Brant. This was no random act of violence, but a calculated crime, executed with precision and cloaked in deception. The little gray cells have unraveled the web, and the killer stands among us." A gasp rippled through the group, and Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. "Let us review the facts. Monsieur Brant was stabbed in a locked compartment, the key missing, the door bolted from within. A silk scarf bearing the initials C.D. and scented with jasmine was found, pointing to Madame Dubois. A ticket stub from Vienna to Paris suggested a hidden past. A leather case, containing only a pearl, was found in the baggage car, the sapphire gone. A coded telegram spoke of a rendezvous in Istanbul and warned to trust no one. A knife, smeared with jam, was a clumsy attempt to mislead, and mud, found on Mademoiselle Petrova's shoes and in the baggage car, hinted at secret movements. Each clue was a thread, and now I weave them together. He turned to the passengers, his eyes sweeping over them. "Lady Harcourt, your late husband's bankruptcy was linked to Monsieur Brant's business dealings. This gave you motive, yet your composure suggested detachment. Dr. Weiss, you treated Monsieur Brant and concealed your journey from Vienna, and you were seen near Compartment 7 at 11:30. Madame Dubois, your flirtation with Brant and the scarf's initials cast suspicion, yet you claim it was planted. Mademoiselle Petrova, you are a journalist, not a governess, investigating Brant smuggling, and your presence in the baggage car raised questions. Each of you has secrets, but only one is the murderer." The passengers shifted uneasily, their eyes darting to one another. Poirot's gaze settled on Lefebvre, who stood rigid, his hands clasped tightly. "Monsieur Lefebvre," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, "you have been most cooperative, yet your silence speaks loudly. You insisted the key was in the compartment, yet it vanished. You had access to the master key, which is also missing. You checked Monsieur Brant's compartment at 11 o'clock, and you alone knew the train's routines intimately. Tell me, monsieur, what is your secret?" Lefebvre's face paled, his voice trembling. I know nothing, Monsieur Poirot. I am but a conductor." Poirot's mustache twitched, and he stepped closer. "No, monsieur, you are the murderer of Thomas Brant." A collective gasp filled the room. Lady Harcourt clutched her teacup, Weiss's spectacles slipped further, Dubois' hand flew to her mouth, and Petrova's eyes widened. Lefebvre staggered back, his face a mask of shock. "Impossible!" he cried. "I am no killer." "You have no proof." Poirot's voice was calm but unyielding. "The proof, monsieur, lies in the details. You were in debt, were you not? Gambling debts, accumulated in Paris, threatening your position on this prestigious train. Monsieur Brant, a smuggler of jewels, was your partner. The sapphire, hidden in his leather case, was to be your salvation, delivered to a contact in Istanbul. But Brant betrayed you, refusing to share the profits. You could not allow this." Lefebvre shook his head, his voice rising. "This is madness. I did not—" Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. You used your master key to enter compartment 7 after 11 o'clock when Brant was alone. You stabbed him with the dagger, taken from his own collection, which he kept in his trunk. You locked the door with a duplicate key stolen from your office during your brief absence in the baggage car. The scarf, purchased in Paris with the initials C.D., was planted to implicate Madame Dubois, whose flirtation with Brant you knew of. The broken champagne glass was a distraction, staged to suggest a struggle. You took the leather case, hiding it in the baggage car, and removed the sapphire, tossing the key into the snow to delay discovery. Lefebvre's face crumpled, his hands shaking. You cannot prove this. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The mud, monsieur. The mud in the baggage car, matching that on Mademoiselle Petrova's shoes, was also on your boots, though you polished them carefully. I observed it this morning. The telegram warned Brant to trust no one, and you were the one he should have feared. The knife, smeared with jam, was your attempt to confuse, but it only confirmed your desperation. You exploited the secrets of the others, Lady Harcourt's bankruptcy, Weiss's hidden past, Dubois' affair, Petrova's investigation, to muddy the waters, knowing their lies would distract from your guilt. Dubois gasped. Mon Dieu, the scarf was a lie. Weiss stammered. I had no part in this. Harcourt's voice was sharp. You used us all, Lefebvre? Petrova sobbed, her voice breaking. I only wanted the truth. Lefebvre collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. I had no choice, he whispered. The debts, they would have ruined me. Brant laughed at me, said I was nothing. I took the sapphire. It was mine by right. Poirot's voice was firm. You took a life, monsieur. That is a crime Hercule Poirot cannot forgive. As Lefebvre wept, Poirot signaled to the porter who had been summoned to guard the door. Secure him until we reach the next station. The police will take him from there. The passengers sat in stunned silence as Lefebvre was led away, his confession echoing in the dining car. Poirot turned to them, his expression softening. Messieurs, mesdames, the truth is revealed. The little gray cells have done their work. You may rest now, though the storm continues. He stepped into the corridor, the snow still falling outside, and gazed at the white expanse. The Continental Express, once a symbol of elegance, had been a stage for betrayal, but Poirot had restored order. As the train's crew worked to clear the tracks, he returned to his compartment, his notebook closed, his mind at peace. The mystery was solved, and Hercule Poirot, the master of truth, stood triumphant once more.